Hi, my name is James Conklin, and I'd like to welcome you to this video presentation from the Human Systems Intervention channel. Today I'm going to be talking with Terry Kyle. Terry is the manager of student life in the Dean of Students office at Concordia, and she's been involved with co-creating change with student leaders for about 4 years now. Most of this change focusing around orientation activities at the university. She's just getting started on her 5th year, and she has offered to meet with us to reflect on what it means to be involved in long-term change. The Student Office mission seeks to assist students to take full advantage of their experience of post-secondary education, particularly by supporting and facilitating the para-academic aspects of this experience. Terry, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experiences in the Dean of Students office, and I understand that what you're going to do is you're going to step us through your experience of a long-term change effort that has been underway since you joined the office about 4 years ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of turn things over to you, and you can tell us about this experience, and then when you're done, I wouldn't be surprised if I have a couple of questions for you. So over to you, Terry.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jamie. Happy to be here. Proud HSI student, 2009. Got to get that in there. Everybody always has to say their cohort. After being an independent consultant for some years, I'm on in a really exciting job right now for me, which is a long-term culture change project at Concordia University with student leaders. The Dean of Students office is all about working with students. One of our major components is working with student leaders who are elected into either faculty associations or the larger overall Concordia Student Union. And then underneath all of those major student associations, there's tons of little student associations. So that's sort of the piece of work that I'm going to talk to you about today. So basically, in 2014 in January, the Dean of Students went to student leaders and said, I've been seeing some really crappy stuff in the news, and is this important to you? And they were like, yes, this is really important to us. And so prior to that, we had been working with student leaders, and they were saying, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. And so we tried to provide those things for them, but there was never a mass of people that came and did it. They'd say, we want a workshop on conflict, or we want a conference on something, and we do provide those things, and then the turnout would be really low because students are really, really busy human beings, and then they're elected beings, and they've got jobs, so their lives are really busy. So whenever you do something with a student, it needs to be very meaningful for them. Not that it doesn't need to be meaningful for all of us, I think, but one of the things about the question of, you plan orientation frosh, dangerous stuff happens, you didn't know that that was going to happen, it was the very first thing you did as a student leader, you get elected in May, you welcome people in August with all these big events, that's dangerous. So they identified that as potentially dangerous and that they wanted help. So we basically said to them, how can we help you? What is it we can do to help you? Because we're here all the time and you're not, every year there's a certain amount of students that leave leadership. Sometimes the entire leadership changes. So there's a lack of continuity there. So we sort of said, like, how can we be the basket that holds what you learn? So we call it co-creating change together. And it flew. We flew with them. We spent basically, well, first I'll go through our pillars. What we say is our relationships are more important than anything, and how we do our work is as important as what we do, and we're all in it together. So those are kind of our fundamental pillars that we repeat to everyone, whether it be our working with students or working with stakeholders within the university who we think need to make some movement. We're constantly repeating those kinds of things. So once we started doing this work, we right away knew that something was changing and it was really important. And we got an HSI consultant in to help us sort of watch what we were doing because we were so busy doing it. So she came in during the late spring because the student leaders have all said, yeah, help us. They helped us transition into another group of student leaders in May. So we had an HSI consultant follow us, and she came up with a theory of change, which happened after September, because between May and September, we're busy working with the new leadership who are planning the events. So basically, we identified the problem is the way orientation for us is planned. Concordia doesn't adequately support a safe and inclusive orientation for us. So that's very much from the Dean of Students perspective. You know, we could say, oh, students drink too much and they need blah, blah, blah. No, we can help with the planning so that they can think more about how it can be safer in other ways for them. So we're really talking about low judgment. And basically we came up with this model. I don't need to go through the whole bunch of it, but basically at the end of it, we hope for a safer and more supportive orientation for us. So that's the goal. So what we realized when this was over in September, somehow throughout the year, we realized, my God, we are always in orientation fresh. And I'll just take you through this cycle. So basically, I was talking about May. So when it says at the top left-hand corner, transition, incoming, outgoing, that's we grab the student leaders right away who are coming in. The way we grab them is because the outgoing ones are saying, this is really important work. And then we basically train them throughout the summer on various things like how to manage the different departments in the university, how to get an alcohol permit, how to close down streets at the city, what does consent mean, bystander intervention, the vulnerability, the precious jewel of a first-year student, sexual assault. So there's a whole variety of things that we train them on. And then that training changes every year according to what the students say. So then after the orientation is over, we go through the whole experience with them. Then we spend the fall collecting data. We go around to the stakeholders in the university as well as all of the student groups, and we say, how did it go this year? They give us the feedback. We summarize it. We meet with them now in January. So now we're starting our 5th year right now in January, which we meet with the stakeholders and student leaders in various ways. And we say, what do you want us to do this year? So far they've said every year, oh, we want you to keep that and that and that. We don't even want to look at your trainings. They're great. The way that we fill out our forms, we need to continue to work on the way we fill out our forms. Oh, the way you put the data together on a wiki isn't working. Like we never know what they're going to say. So then we work with other people in the university as well as the students throughout the entire winter semester to make it better for the next student groups who are coming in. And this is an iterative cycle. And what's really cool about it, what we found out about it, was that the orientation Frosh work brings the students close to us. It develops those relationships that are so important so that when other things happen throughout the year, may it be, political conflict, happiness, like anything they might need help with in their university experience, they come to us faster because they trust us and we can guide them to the right place, and then they can influence the work that we do. These are just the various student associations that we mainly work with, but that is already changed this year because it's growing. And we work with the different various university stakeholders. These are the main ones that we work with. And when we did do our theory of change, we basically came up with 5 different ways in which we did our work and how we did that work. And we also, it's not up on the screen, but we were also not as good at some of those ways of working together. So some of them we've identified as weaknesses. And so we constantly are looking at our work through these ways and saying, how is the way that we, the Dean of Students, working, are we doing our work better? So it's complex, but it's really fun. And then you can see, these are the 4 years over time of what we've accomplished. And if you look at them, you can see that we're doing more and more every year. And that's really exciting work as well. and that part we don't need to look at. So we're done.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. So one thing I'm curious about, Terry, is that you've described the change effort. And so let me see if I've got the gist of it. It sounds like there was a mutual concern, a concern on the part of the area of the administration that's responsible for FROSH and orientation, but also the same concern shared by the student leaders who brought leadership to that process from the student perspective. So there was this shared concern that you validated with the student leaders before taking any action at all. And initially, I'm just sort of imagining that this might have occurred for people as, we're going to equip these student leaders by providing them with some training to develop some skills and competency that will allow them then to act in appropriate ways in creating, let's say, more safety during orientation and FROSH. So it sounded like it was sort of like that. So now my question is, you mentioned in a very intriguing way at the start that you soon realized this was actually a cultural change, a cultural transformation. So can you tell us about that? Why do you say that you came to realize this is really about culture?
So I guess the identification of the problem really came from the dean of students, and it came out of headlines in newspapers. And because our role here is to help student leaders be successful, the question didn't necessarily come from a bigger place. It really just came into his head like, boy, I'm seeing this in the newspaper. Could it possibly be happening here? And they were like, yeah, like the fact that they were so open and honest about the issues that they were experiencing, and the fact that they were a variety of student leaders from a variety of different places were merging together and hearing each other and agreeing. There were no closed doors whispering. There was it really did come from them. And because it was so strongly coming from them, it was like, oh my gosh, something is happening here. We don't even know what is happening here. But they were asking for help. And it was really clear how we could help them. And the help wasn't even going to come to them. It was actually going to come to next year's leaders. So they were actually doing it, not for themselves, but for the ones that were hired. We're having a conversation in January, and we're having students saying for next May, like, this is our legacy. We want to leave this behind. And so I don't think we even realized right. We just knew something important was going on. And that's when we brought in a consultant, because we were like, somebody needs to record this so we can figure out what's going on, like, so that we can remember what's going on. And so it was between September of 2014 and December of 2014, where we were like, oh my gosh, there's something very iterative that's going on here. Like, this has influenced all of our work. This is going to continue to influence all of our work, and it's not going to go away, but it's precious if we don't keep that element of co-creation and what is it you want us to do movement with the people.
So Terry, what if I was to ask you to summarize, from your perspective, what it is that changed? What was the big change that took place through this process? How would you respond?
So one of the things that happened is that because we took on the perspective from if we make the planning process clearer, change will come. So I remember a couple of years ago, one of the people that I adore from security, who analyzes all of the events for security, I was like, I was a little bit having one of those bad days. And she said, no, the good thing here is that, administratively, we've cleared enough out of the way so that we can see some of the problems more clearly. So what we were asking the students to do in order to plan an event made it impossible for them to think about, how much alcohol should we really have? Or, how can we make the drinking space safer? So now there's been some administrative stuff that we've made easier, and that's with multiple stakeholders working together and with students telling us what's so hard, so that now we can go into deeper conversations about actually, like, students going, man, like, it was really great last year when there was a certain percentage of people who were sober, because soberness is also a part about making the planning easier, so we're able to have like open, honest conversations around sex, alcohol. We've gone from having only the student leaders trained to having the student, so the executives trained. We've moved from executives being trained to all student leaders who work only around orientation frosh being trained, to some of the student associations having every single solitary first year attendee of the orientation frosh have a consent bystander intervention training.
So would you say that that a big part of the transformation then was a kind of transformation of the relationship between administration and students in everything that's going on in terms of planning and then actual activities and then follow-up things to do with orientation and frosh?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really cool about this is that it's the Dean of Students' role to advocate for students, like not advocate like an advocate, but, go, okay, we need space for students, or, this is hard for students in terms of student associations. And so what's really cool about this is that there's a feeling that there's a whole bunch of people, if we go back to the stakeholders, there's a lot of different services at the university that are working together towards making it easier for students, because if we make it easier for students, it's easier for us, right? Oh, the students are always blah, 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 blah. And then the students are going, oh, the university, blah, blah, blah. And we're sort of stuck in the middle going like, oh, let's all come together and stop the blah, 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 or look at the blah, blah, blah. Let's look at the blah, blah, blah.
I love what you said about your colleague in security, who said that one of the great things that was sort of emerging through it all was that we can see things now that we couldn't see before. Things are more out in the open, and I'm inferring from that that's partly because of trust that was created in this relationship.
Yes. Go back to the pillars: trust and relationships. We sit in rooms where we've had people going, "Oh, those kids," we're like, they're young adults, and so it's like, oh, okay, they're not kids, okay, and just the fact that processes are improving makes the relationships better. So it's cyclical in that sense. And the other thing that's really cool about this orientation frosh work, which we're doing right now, culture change work, is that we know that it is influencing other work that we're doing, because we have a grounded theory of change. We're looking at some of the other projects that we're doing, a student engagement project right now. We're like, oh, well, let's be grounded like we were in this work. Let's be grounded. Let's use this method, this theory that we have of our own, and apply it to the other work that we're doing, because it's working, So that's what's successful. So now what we're going to be doing, which is interesting, is we're looking at, okay, we're going to be doing a 5-year look at our work. So we're bringing in the consultant that we had in 5 years ago to look, 4 years ago, to look at our 5th year. And now we're wondering if we should stop calling it a culture change, or if, maybe because of the nature of our work, we're always in a transition. Yeah, maybe it's a permanent state, which is what I think in some ways it is, and that we can also be making it better every year. And things fall off, and then you bring them back again too, because you have to work from the basis of what the student needs. And then we always have an agenda too, which is like, we want to reach more and more and more and more students, So we always have something that we, the Dean of Students, is working on as well.
It sounds like this change process had to do in part, it turns out, had to do in part with changing mindsets. So changing mindsets, changing ways of thinking, changing assumptions, changing the stories that we tell about each other. And it sounds like this happened both among administrators and probably among students as well.
Oh yeah, it really does. That's a great thing to say. So student groups, even though they change all the time, every faculty has a culture within themselves. And they go, oh, they're like this and they're like that. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, that was like, they changed 3 years ago. Like, you guys don't you're working with them, like it's not really like that anymore. So one of the great things about the work we do is that we bring the student groups together. So more and more, they're even starting to plan events together. So they're having like faculty, like all of the faculties having events for students. And so there's more collaboration between them, and you see them developing relationships with each other more and stuff like that. So, and then right now we have a couple of student groups who are making it mandatory to do have all of their first year students be trained. Oh gosh, peer pressure. We didn't do that, and we feel like we really should do that next year. So there's that positive peer pressure that is on them as well to change. So it's happening between every stakeholder, everybody within the system. So it's a really, really exciting change.
Well, I have one last question I'd like to ask you. And just before I ask the question, though, I just want to say that you mentioned that you're bringing a consultant back in to take a look at all that has happened. So I hope that you will consider rejoining us, a few months in the future when some of that work has been completed, to share some of those results with us. And then my final question is, okay, so it sounds like in some ways it's been a whirlwind, it's been an iterative process. You're going through the process, working on improvements year by year, and working on change year by year. And so if you were sort of to, sit back, take a deep breath at this point, and enumerate 1, 2, or 3 important things that you've learned through this experience about long-term organizational change, what might you say?
Well, it makes it, when what you're doing is bang on, you kind of, it. When it's simple and it's not complicated, I think that's one of the things that we always have to go through a process to make things really, really complicated. We do. And you have to let everybody make it really, really complicated, but that it's good when it's really simple, and you often end back at the same place where you started, but you still need to go through the whole process, right? So the work that I'm doing is really simple. And so that makes it really fun to come to work every day, because I love what I'm doing. I love the work that I'm doing. Simple, and I do almost the same thing every day, which is listen to people and, repeat a lot of the similar things. But, we need to have spaces for people to sit around and talk about what they need to talk about. And that if you let people get together in a meaningful way and talk about what's meaningful to them, they feel validated and great. And, that brings them closer to you. The more you can bring people closer into the work, the easier the work is to do. And that, I feel like I live my work. So it's not any different when I go talk to a friend or when I'm at work. You've got to be honest, open, and straight, and thoughtful.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, Terry, thank you for giving us this time and sharing this really, really interesting experience with us. And as I said, you can count on me pestering you a few months down the road to see if you will come back and give us an update on all of this. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. Take care.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed Terry's discussion of culture change in an academic institution. I know that I was struck by a number of things in her presentation. One was how, for me at least, as I was listening to her, so much of culture change in this instance anyhow came down to changing the way that people think, changing existing patterns of thought, existing assumptions about other people in the organization. And that, to me, it was very clear when she talked about how some administrators would make certain assumptions about students and then these assumptions would shape their behavior. And that kind of is the point of culture change. We say that culture, an organization's culture, enables and fosters and releases certain patterns of behavior that are consistent with that culture. And so there are some kinds of change that require changing culture in order to create the foundation for new ways of acting. And that's what Terry was bringing to us. I also wanted to mention that at the very beginning of her talk, she acknowledged herself as a member of HSI 2009, and that just means that she was a member of the 2009 cohort in the Human Systems Intervention Masters program at Concordia University. And just in case some of you are interested in this program, I am showing you here a link that will take you to some additional information about the program. And if that seems a little too complex to jot down, then you can always simply do a Google search for Human Systems Intervention, Concordia University, and that should take you to our program without any trouble. I do hope that you will join us again soon for these video presentations about topics that are of interest to those of us who work in the area of human systems intervention, and I'll just say goodbye for now.